The wine glass shattered before anyone realized she had dropped it. Silence swallowed the Carter family's dinner table. Then Melissa's voice cut through like glass. "You just can't help yourself, can you, Evelyn? Always controlling, always judging." Evelyn Carter stood frozen, red wine running down her wrist. Her son Daniel shifted, pretending to check his phone. The grandchildren looked at their plates. Outside, rain hammered the windows of the Savannah estate. Inside, thunder waited to break. "I was only asking about the mortgage," Evelyn said softly. "You mentioned a missed payment." Melissa's smile was sharp. "Of course you'd bring that up in front of everyone. Do you think you're still in charge?" "I thought I was family," Evelyn whispered. Daniel exhaled, tired. "Mom, please. Let's just have one dinner without talking about money." The words cut deeper than any insult. For years, Evelyn had paid for everything: the wedding, the down payment, the twins' school, even Melissa's fashion business that never earned $1. She'd done it out of love, but love freely given can turn invisible. Rain thickened. "I only asked because I care," Evelyn said. Melissa stood, silk catching the candlelight. "No, you asked because you need to feel powerful. You think money makes you the head of this family." She leaned closer, voice cold. "But this isn't your home anymore." The room blurred. Daniel said nothing. That silence told her everything. When Melissa told her to leave, Evelyn thought it was drama, until she heard the lock click behind her. Rain soaked through her robe as she stood on the porch, staring at the door. Lightning flashed, showing her reflection in the glass, an older woman, gray hair plastered to her face, shivering in the storm. Inside, laughter resumed. They were eating dessert. She stepped into the rain, walked to her car, and sat motionless, gripping the wheel. "They locked me out," she whispered. "My own son." She waited. No one came to get her. Only the storm answered. She was 68, but the betrayal made her feel ancient. Yet beneath the hurt, something stirred, a pulse of steel. They thought she was powerless. They thought age and love had tamed her. They had forgotten who she truly was. Evelyn Carter had built an investment firm from nothing after her husband died. She had turned $10,000 into millions. She had negotiated with bankers who tried to cheat her and walked away richer every time. She wasn't fragile. She had only traded her power for peace. Now peace was gone. She started the engine. The headlights carved through the rain as she drove toward downtown Savannah. Each drop on the windshield sounded like applause for a woman finally waking up. At a red light, she caught her reflection in the mirror, hair drenched, lipstick fading, eyes alive again. "They think I'm done," she murmured. "They're about to learn who raised this family." By the time she reached her penthouse, the rain had softened to mist. The doorman gasped when he saw her soaked through. "Mrs. Carter, are you hurt?" "Just a misunderstanding," she said calmly. In the elevator, water dripped from her coat. Each drop echoed like a countdown. When she stepped into her apartment, she didn't turn on the lights. The city spread before her through glass walls, the river glimmering under flashes of lightning. She went straight to her study, opened the safe, and pulled out a black folder labeled Emergency Directives. Inside were old documents, account transfers, dormant trusts, contingency plans. They had once been business safeguards. Tonight, they would be her weapons. She dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. "Evelyn," a voice said, sleepy but sharp. "It's midnight. Are you all right?" It was Ruth Jameson, her attorney and oldest friend. Evelyn looked out at the dark city, then at the lightning fading across the river. "I'm fine, Ruth," she said slowly, "but I think it's time I reminded my family who they're dealing with." She hung up, exhaled, and set the folder on her desk. The storm rolled farther away. soft and certain, like the sound of applause after an opening act. For years, Evelyn had believed money could buy harmony, that generosity could heal what pride had broken. Tonight she saw the truth. Some lessons cost more than cash. She wiped the rain from her face, her voice barely above a whisper. They took my kindness for weakness. That's their mistake. Outside, the city lights flickered across the wet streets. The storm had passed, but another was just beginning. The kind that didn't come from clouds, but from the calm, deliberate fury of a woman no one should have underestimated. Before she became one of Savannah's most respected investors, Evelyn Carter had been a barefoot girl from a forgotten mill town in southern Georgia. Her father drank, her mother taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and at 17, Evelyn left home with one suitcase, a scholarship, and a promise to herself. She would never depend on anyone again. She studied finance when women were expected to type, not trade. Professors ignored her, classmates flirted instead of competing, but Evelyn learned to use invisibility as armor. "Let them underestimate you," her mother said. "That's when you strike." After college, Evelyn married Robert Carter, a young banker who believed in her drive. They built a modest life, small house, one child, steady hope. When a drunk driver killed Robert, everything collapsed. Daniel was 3. The life insurance check was $10,000. It wasn't enough to grieve on. Evelyn turned it into capital. At night, she studied markets while Daniel slept. Within 2 years, she had multiplied her savings 5-fold. By 30, she opened Carter Capital Partners from her kitchen table, advising widows and single mothers how to grow what they had. She wasn't just managing money, she was rewriting her life. Success came fast and hard. She invested during downturns, bought real estate others feared, and built a portfolio that made bankers whisper her name. By 50, her firm managed $500 million in assets, and people called her the steel magnolia of finance. Still, sometimes she wondered what she'd traded for stability. She gave Daniel everything she never had: elite schools, trips, and endless safety. "One day you'll understand," she said, handing him a telescope for his 10th birthday. "The view is worth the climb." At 58, Evelyn owned 3 homes and a penthouse overlooking the Savannah River. Then Daniel brought home a woman named Melissa Lane. She was young, magnetic, full of ideas about fashion branding and online influence. Evelyn found her charming, too polished, too fast. But when Melissa called her mom after the second dinner, something in her heart cracked open. The wedding was grand, the kind Melissa's followers would envy. Evelyn paid for everything: venue, designer dress, honeymoon. She even gifted them a house on Skidaway Island and seed money for Daniel's small consulting firm. "Every entrepreneur deserves a chance," she told her lawyer and closest friend, Ruth Jameson. Ruth frowned. "Evelyn, don't confuse generosity with partnership." "They're family," Evelyn said. "It's not business." "Everything becomes business when money's involved," Ruth replied. For a while, life looked perfect. Melissa posted glossy photos of their dinners, vacations, and twin babies, tagged with Hussard Carter legacy and our family goals. Evelyn's name never appeared, though her money funded every backdrop. When she saw the pictures, she told herself it didn't matter. Family didn't need credit. Then came the small requests: a renovation, tuition payments, a temporary loan for Melissa's business. Daniel's company struggled. Melissa's influencer career blossomed online but not on paper. Evelyn kept covering the shortfalls, convincing herself she was investing in love. By 65, she was paying nearly all their major expenses. When she hesitated, Daniel said softly, "Mom, you're not helping us. You're helping your grandchildren's future." That word, family, was the one she couldn't resist. Ruth visited one evening with coffee and concern. "Do you know who can access your trust accounts?" Evelyn hesitated. Daniel's executor. Melissa's listed second. Ruth sighed. Then you've already given them the keys. That night, Evelyn stood by her window, watching the city shimmer across the river. She'd built everything to be untouchable, yet somehow her own family held the strings. Her mother's warning echoed, "Never let anyone see how much you need them." A week later, Daniel called. "Mom, Melissa wants to discuss consolidating family finances. She says it'll make things simpler." Evelyn agreed to dinner. Melissa arrived with spreadsheets, smiling like a CEO. "We just want efficiency," she said. "You're the foundation of our legacy. Why not make it official?" Evelyn listened, polite but silent, recognizing the language of takeover. After dinner, she called Ruth. "You were right," she said. "They're not asking. They're positioning." Ruth's tone was calm. "Then position yourself first." Evelyn hung up and looked at her reflection in the glass. Two women stared back, the one who had fought her way from nothing and the one who'd let love soften her edges. She traced the faint scar on her lip, a reminder from the night a thief broke into her first office and she'd fought him off with a paperweight. "Never again," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled across Savannah. Inside, Evelyn Carter, the steel magnolia, felt something cold and certain return. She had spent decades teaching others how to protect their wealth. Now she would protect herself. Control, she reminded herself, isn't granted, it's taken back. Evelyn still remembered the first time Melissa walked into her penthouse after the honeymoon, heels clicking across the marble like applause. "This view," Melissa whispered, staring out at the Savannah River glittering in the evening light. "It feels like power." Evelyn smiled, not realizing that power was exactly what her daughter-in-law had come for. In those early months, Melissa was charm in silk. She called often, brought gifts, praised Evelyn's taste. "You make 60 look like 40, she'd say, and Evelyn, who had spent decades earning respect but little affection, felt herself melt. When Melissa proposed an online venture, "Fashion meets finance, Mom, your brilliance with my creativity," Evelyn agreed without hesitation. Daniel looked happier than ever. He sent photos of the twins, thanked her for buying the Skidaway Island house. Evelyn told her oldest friend, attorney Ruth Jameson, "Melissa reminds me of me at her age, fearless and focused." Ruth's reply was measured. "Then watch her closely. Ambition wears a smile until it doesn't need to." Evelyn laughed it off. She wanted family, not another battle. Sunday dinners became ritual. The twins, Ava and Caleb, chased each other through the yard while Daniel grilled. Melissa poured wine and spoke of the Carter legacy and our family brand. The words unsettled Evelyn, though she couldn't explain why. Gradually, conveniences appeared. Melissa paid restaurant bills with Evelyn's card for reward points. She offered to streamline household payments by linking their accounts. She even suggested Evelyn let her accountant handle taxes. "You've worked hard enough," Melissa said. "Let us take care of you for once." Evelyn agreed, grateful, trusting. Months later, she realized her bank alerts had stopped arriving. The first major disagreement came when Melissa insisted the twins attend an elite private academy costing $40,000 a year. Evelyn objected. "The public school is excellent," she said. Melissa's smile was soft, sharp. "Of course, but don't you want them to thrive? Isn't that what grandmothers do?" Daniel added, "Mom, it's just tuition. We'll pay half." They never did. By Christmas, Evelyn had covered the entire amount plus educational supplies. She told herself it was love, not control. Then Ruth arrived one afternoon holding a document. "Melissa's business dissolved last month," she said. "Did you know?" Evelyn frowned. "She told me it was expanding." Ruth handed her the printout. She reopened under the same name, without your ownership share. That night, Evelyn called Melissa. "Oh, that's just a legal update," Melissa said smoothly. "You're still part of it in spirit." "Spirit doesn't sign contracts," Evelyn replied. Melissa laughed lightly. "Mom, don't be dramatic." The call ended, leaving Evelyn cold. Weeks later, Melissa's social media bloomed with photos. Designer clothes, lavish events, captions like "One Carter Legacy" and "On Her Family Empire." Not once was Evelyn mentioned. When she asked Daniel, he sighed. "Mom, it's branding. You wouldn't understand. But perception becomes truth," she warned. He smiled wearily. It makes her happy. Because she loved him, Evelyn let it go until Melissa showed up unannounced at her downtown office. "I've been thinking," Melissa began, spreading glossy folders across the desk. "You're brilliant but old school. We could relaunch Carter Capital, new logo, modern voice. I'd be the face, you'd be the legend behind it." Evelyn kept her tone neutral. "You want to rebrand my company?" "Our company," Melissa corrected. "You'd stay owner, but I'd modernize operations. Think of it as succession planning." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Let me consider it." When Melissa left, Evelyn locked the door and sat very still. The instincts that once made her millions flickered alive. She saw the pattern now, the access to finances, the legal maneuvering, the charm. This wasn't partnership. It was positioning. That evening, she called Ruth. "You ever notice manipulation starts with flattery?" Ruth chuckled. "They call that grooming in business." Evelyn smiled. "Then I suppose I'm the mark." "Not if you remember who you are," Ruth said. Evelyn poured herself wine and looked out at the river. Her reflection stared back. Older, yes, but still sharp. She realized she had traded power for peace, mistaking silence for love. The next morning, she opened her laptop before dawn. One by one, she checked every account, every trust, every signature line. She printed records, revoked joint access, and saved new passwords. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but clarity. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair. The city outside was waking, golden light spilling over the water. Evelyn whispered, "They wanted a partner. They're about to meet their competition." By spring, Melissa had fully evolved from sweet daughter-in-law to the family's self-appointed director. At parties, she introduced Evelyn as our financial visionary, a title that sounded flattering until Evelyn realized it implied retirement, not relevance. At dinners, Melissa managed every subject, schools, vacations, even Evelyn's own investments, while Daniel sat beside her, silent and compliant. Evelyn smiled politely, but inside she was watching the woman she had bankrolled claim the spotlight. The online business that had once been their project now existed solely under Melissa's name. Evelyn had provided the capital, the contacts, even the launch event, but Melissa took the credit. When a lifestyle magazine ran a feature on Savannah's self-made women, Evelyn's contribution was reduced to one sentence, supported by family investors. Daniel forwarded the link proudly. "She's really getting noticed, Mom." "She certainly is," Evelyn said. Evelyn still adored her grandchildren. She never missed a birthday or school recital, though she often felt like an antique on display at Sunday dinners. "You've worked hard enough, Mom," Melissa would say, pouring her another glass of wine. "Let us manage things now." Evelyn had built her empire by reading people. Now she saw what hid behind Melissa's charm, control dressed as concern. The shift grew bolder with the Costa Rica family content trip. Melissa pitched it as both vacation and brand expansion. "You'll love it," she said. "The camera loves you." Evelyn chuckled. "Humidity and 70-year-old bones don't mix." "Oh, we'll take care of everything," Melissa replied sweetly. 2 weeks later, Evelyn received the invoice. First-class flights, ocean view villa, private photographer, all billed to her corporate card. When she called, Melissa sounded insulted. "I thought we were partners. Family investments take time." Daniel added softly, "We'll reimburse you, Mom. It's just a temporary thing." The money never came back. That evening, Ruth visited. Evelyn handed her the statement. "She's funding her fame with my money." Ruth frowned. "And Daniel?" "Completely blind," Evelyn said bitterly. "Then maybe it's time you opened his eyes." Later that night, Evelyn scrolled through Melissa's social media posts. Luxury beaches, candlelit dinners, matching family outfits. The captions oozed gratitude and ambition. Building the Carter legacy, one dream at a time. Thousands of strangers applauded. Evelyn whispered, "She's selling my life as her success story." A week later, Melissa and Daniel showed up at her penthouse. "We've been thinking," Melissa began smoothly. "You shouldn't live alone here. It's too much space for one person. You could move closer to us. We'd handle the details." Evelyn's expression didn't change. Handle or control? Melissa laughed lightly. "You'd spend more time with the twins, and financial management can be stressful at your age. Daniel and I could help." "Are you suggesting I can't manage my own money?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Of course not," Melissa said, her voice honey-sweet. "It's about teamwork." After they left, Evelyn stood by the window, her pulse steady and cold. They weren't asking anymore. They were preparing to take over. In the following days, she noticed subtle changes. Melissa replaced her longtime housekeeper to simplify things. Daniel asked about emergency legal documents. Even the twins repeated rehearsed lines. "Grandma, Daddy says you'll live near us soon so you won't be lonely." Loneliness was her fear, but control was her boundary. She called Ruth. "If they're planning something, how do I find proof?" "Check for anything you didn't sign," Ruth advised. The next morning, Evelyn found it, an unsigned family coordination form from Daniel's email, her digital signature already attached. Her stomach turned, but her mind cleared. She printed it, labeled it evidence, and slid it into her safe. When Melissa called later, cheerful and unaware, Evelyn said, "Not tonight, dear. I've got work to finish." That night, she returned to her old rhythm, coffee at dawn, spreadsheets at sunrise. Numbers steadied her like prayer. She reviewed every account, closed shared access, and quietly shifted assets into a private trust. For the first time in months, she felt alive. By the end of the week, her plan was ready. Consolidate everything, lock access, and prepare to remind her family who really built the Carter legacy. The next Sunday, she arrived for dinner composed and radiant, wearing navy silk and quiet confidence. Melissa greeted her with exaggerated warmth. "Mom, you look stunning." "Thank you, dear," Evelyn said evenly. "I've been busy remembering who I am." For a fleeting second, Melissa's smile faltered, her eyes uncertain. Evelyn caught that flicker of fear and savored it. The game had changed, and this time, Evelyn wasn't playing defense. Evelyn moved through the next few weeks like a ghost in silk, quiet, calm, and calculating. She no longer challenged Melissa or Daniel. She listened, observed, and collected evidence in silence. Years in finance had taught her the value of patience. Sometimes the best negotiation was the one no one realized had begun. Melissa, still drunk on her own success, posted videos about building generational wealth, filmed from the marble kitchen Evelyn had paid for. Daniel handled her camera, smiling dutifully while his wife lectured followers about ambition and gratitude. Evelyn watched in silence, her son shrinking behind the woman who claimed to be creating the Carter legacy. At the next family dinner, Melissa unveiled her latest plan, a glossy slideshow on the TV showing projected profits from their brand. "Once we merge our financial structures, everything will flow seamlessly," she said, her tone bright and rehearsed. Evelyn's smile was pleasant. And who would manage this flow? "Well, Daniel and I would, naturally," Melissa replied. "With you as our advisor, of course." I see, Evelyn said softly. And when would I be consulted? Melissa laughed. Oh, Mom, you'll approve everything. This is about easing your workload. Evelyn lifted her glass, meeting Melissa's eyes. How thoughtful. That night, back at her penthouse, Evelyn sat by the window overlooking the river. The city shimmered, confident and cruel. She opened her files, bank statements, property deeds, investment logs, all now under her sole control. The legal structure she'd rebuilt was flawless. Melissa could dig, but she'd find only locked doors. Still, Evelyn needed to know the depth of their deceit, so she set a quiet trap. First, she told Daniel her accountant had flagged a missing fund transfer. Within a day, Melissa texted, "Don't worry, I'm checking on it." Evelyn hadn't mentioned the account's name or amount. The response confirmed everything. Melissa was monitoring her finances. Next, she mentioned over coffee that she might sell her penthouse. The following morning, Daniel casually asked about its market value. Evelyn smiled. They were tracking her every word. When she told Ruth, her attorney friend, Ruth leaned forward. They're comfortable. That's when people make mistakes. They already have, Evelyn said. They forgot who taught them about money. Her moment arrived sooner than expected. Melissa announced she'd been invited to speak at a Women of Wealth conference in Atlanta. It's perfect exposure for the Carter brand, she said. I'd love to mention you on stage, Mom. Your name adds credibility. Evelyn agreed. Of course. I might even attend. Melissa hesitated but couldn't resist the idea of public praise. The event glowed with chandeliers and camera flashes. Melissa took the stage in a cream suit, confident and polished. Success, she declared, is built through family trust. My husband's mother taught me everything about generosity. Applause followed. Evelyn stood, walked slowly toward the stage, and took the microphone. Melissa's right, she began. Generosity is powerful until it's mistaken for surrender. The audience went still. Melissa froze, smiling too wide. Evelyn continued, voice steady. I built my company from $10,000 after my husband died. Every woman here knows what that means. We earn control, not permission. And control, she paused, is something we never give away in the name of family. The applause started quietly, then grew into a storm. Melissa stood motionless, color draining from her face. Evelyn handed the microphone to the host, nodded to the crowd, and walked off stage with the slow grace of a queen reclaiming her throne. Backstage, Daniel confronted her. Mom, that was humiliating. You embarrassed her. Evelyn looked at her son, calm and kind. No, Daniel. I reminded her who built the stage she's standing on. That night, Melissa called repeatedly. Evelyn didn't answer. Within a week, the fallout began. Brand partners questioned Melissa's claims. Sponsors paused contracts. When they reached out to confirm her ties with Carter Capital, Evelyn responded politely, Our firm has no ongoing affiliation with that brand. The reaction was swift. Endorsements disappeared. Melissa posted desperate messages about new directions and personal growth, but the panic was clear behind every filtered photo. Daniel came to his mother one evening, his voice raw. Mom, everything's collapsing. Can you help her fix this? Evelyn studied him. Daniel, I already did. I taught her what happens when you build your future on someone else's foundation. He didn't argue. He just nodded, eyes lowered, realizing too late that she'd been right all along. When he left, Evelyn sat by the window, the city lights reflecting off the river. She hadn't wanted war, but peace without respect was surrender. She poured a glass of wine, her voice soft in the silence. Lesson 1, she whispered. Never teach people that your kindness is limitless. Summer came heavy with heat and silence. For the first time in years, no one from Daniel's house called on Sundays. No brunch invitations, no family updates, no grandchild visits arranged like business appointments. The quiet was unnerving at first, then liberating. Evelyn began walking every morning through Forsyth Park, breathing deep, watching the world move without her family orbiting around her. By mid-July, Daniel finally called. His voice was low, measured. "Mom, Melissa's not doing well. The brand's over. We lost a lot. Maybe we could come by?" "Of course," she said, hiding the tremor in her hand. When they arrived, Evelyn saw the cracks instantly. Melissa's perfect hair hung limp. Her eyes were red, her tone rehearsed but fragile. Daniel looked older, creased by worry, not wisdom. They sat stiffly on Evelyn's white couch like guests, not family. Melissa spoke first. "Dorothy." She stopped, caught herself. "Evelyn, I owe you an apology." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "For what exactly?" "For crossing lines, for forgetting boundaries, for treating your generosity like a resource." The words came out brittle, too polished. Evelyn heard the guilt but also the calculation behind it. She'd seen too many clients fake repentance when the market turned. Daniel reached for her hand. "We lost the house, Mom. We can't pay tuition. We're staying with friends until we figure it out." Evelyn kept her tone even. "You have jobs, don't you?" Melissa shook her head. "I left nursing 2 years ago. The online work was supposed to replace it." "And Daniel?" Evelyn asked. "I've been trying," he said, "but with everything collapsing, no one wants to work with us." Evelyn studied them both, their carefully chosen humility, the flicker of entitlement still alive behind the apology. "I see," she said. "And what is it you're asking for?" Melissa swallowed. "A loan. Just enough to get back on our feet." The room went still. Evelyn could almost hear the hum of the city beyond her windows. "A loan," she repeated softly. "Not a gift?" "A loan," Melissa said quickly. "We'll pay it back." Evelyn stood and crossed to her desk, pulling out a single-page document. "This is a standard promissory note," she said. "I use it for clients. Read it carefully." Daniel frowned. "Mom, that's not necessary." "It is," Evelyn said. "If this is business, let's treat it like business." Melissa hesitated, then signed. Evelyn countersigned, placed the copy in her safe, and handed them a check. "This will cover 2 months. After that, you'll need income, not sympathy." When they left, the air in the apartment seemed lighter. Evelyn poured herself a glass of iced tea, savoring the stillness. She wasn't cruel. She was teaching them what accountability felt like. That night, she found herself scrolling through old photos, the wedding she'd paid for, the nursery she'd furnished, the family vacations she'd funded. Every image shimmered with the illusion of love, but under it was something colder, dependency disguised as affection. She shut the album. Enough nostalgia. The next morning, Evelyn visited her attorney. "I want to finalize the trust," she said. "New terms." James looked up from his notes. "Tighter restrictions?" "Very," she said. "If I die, Daniel inherits nothing directly. The grandchildren will receive educational funds, but only after age 21. No one touches principal without trustee approval." He nodded. "And the trustee?" "Me, for now. After me, Margaret. Her old friend would protect her legacy better than blood ever had." By late summer, Evelyn's phone rang again. "Daniel." "Mom, we found a small rental. Things are improving. Melissa's working part-time at a clinic." "That's good news," Evelyn said. He paused. "I wanted to say thank you for the loan and for not giving up on us." For the first time, Evelyn heard genuine humility in his voice. Maybe the lesson was taking root. A week later, she met her grandchildren for ice cream. The twins, now teenagers, seemed quieter, humbler. "Grandma," the girl said shyly, "Mom's working a lot. She said you're helping us again." Evelyn smiled. "I'm helping you help yourselves. That's different." As they walked home, Jacob looked up. Are you mad at Mom and Dad? Evelyn paused. I was disappointed, but anger fades faster than respect. I just hope they learn the difference. That evening, Melissa sent an email, short, unadorned. Thank you for giving us another chance. We won't waste it this time. Evelyn stared at the screen for a long moment. Maybe sincerity had finally found its way through their pride, or maybe this was just survival. Either way, she had boundaries now, stone walls built from experience. When she closed her laptop, the city lights shimmered across the river like silent witnesses. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt peace, not the fragile calm of control, but the steady quiet of freedom earned. Autumn came early to Savannah that year. The air carried that faint bite of change Evelyn had always loved, the kind that warned people to prepare before the season turned cold. She spent her mornings at the park, her afternoons reviewing investments, and her evenings mentoring 2 young women entrepreneurs through a community foundation. For the first time in years, her days were her own. Daniel and Melissa kept their distance but stayed polite. They sent updates, small, cautious ones. Melissa's clinic job became full-time. Daniel found steady work with a real estate agency, and the twins were thriving at their public school. The transformation was quiet, but it was real. Evelyn allowed herself a flicker of hope that they might finally understand the dignity of effort. One afternoon, Daniel called unexpectedly. Mom, the twins made honor roll. They want you to come to the ceremony. Evelyn smiled. I'll be there. The auditorium smelled of new paper and floor polish. She sat in the front row as the twins walked on stage, faces bright with pride. Afterward, Emma ran into her arms. Grandma, I did it. Yes, you did, Evelyn said, hugging her tightly. And you did it yourself. For a moment, it felt like the world had healed. But peace never stayed long in families built on broken trust. A few weeks later, Melissa invited her for dinner. Just family, she said. Evelyn arrived to find a perfectly set table, candles lit, and the faint sound of jazz playing. Melissa greeted her warmly, too warmly. You look wonderful, Evelyn, she said. You must be busy these days. I stay occupied, Evelyn replied carefully. They talked about the children, school, work. The conversation felt rehearsed, each topic flowing too neatly into the next. Finally, Melissa leaned forward. We wanted to ask about something. Just a small favor. Evelyn's heart sank. She'd heard that tone before. Our landlord is selling the house, Daniel explained. We found another place, but we need help with the down payment. Only short term, we swear. Evelyn placed her fork down gently. You already have a loan with me you haven't repaid. Melissa rushed in. We're paying it bit by bit. This would just keep things stable for the kids. We've learned so much from you, Evelyn. You've inspired us to build wisely. The words were smooth, honeyed, but Evelyn heard the hunger beneath them. Melissa, she said softly, inspiration isn't measured in money. Daniel's face flushed. We're trying, Mom. You have no idea how hard it is. Oh, I do, she interrupted. Hard work is what built everything you see around you. The silence stretched long enough to turn awkward. Finally, Melissa smiled, thin and tight. Of course, we understand. Evelyn stayed only long enough to finish her coffee. When she left, she knew it was over. The lesson hadn't stuck. Desperation was back in their eyes, disguised as charm. That night, she wrote 2 letters, one to her attorney, updating her will, the other to Daniel, sealed and stamped, but not yet sent. In the first, she instructed that no family member would receive direct inheritance until demonstrating financial independence for 5 consecutive years. In the second, she wrote with the calm of final clarity. My love for you has never wavered, but my trust has conditions. I will not fund comfort at the cost of character. I hope someday you'll understand the gift I'm giving you by saying no." Weeks passed. The letters sat unsent on her desk while she debated whether to give them one last chance. Then one morning, Ruth appeared at her door holding a folded newspaper. "Evelyn, have you seen this?" The front page featured Melissa, smiling for the cameras outside a courthouse. The headline read, "Local influencer files lawsuit against former investor for breach of trust." Evelyn's breath caught. She read the article twice. Melissa claimed Evelyn had unfairly frozen shared business accounts years earlier, costing her hundreds of thousands in brand revenue. The irony was breathtaking. Ruth exhaled slowly. She's gone too far this time. Evelyn nodded, and she's about to learn how far I can go. Within an hour, she was at her attorney's office. James looked grim. "We can dismantle this easily. Her claims are baseless. But it will get messy." "Let it," Evelyn said. "Truth survives mess." That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Evelyn sat alone on her terrace. The city hummed below, unaware of the quiet war about to reignite. Her anger wasn't hot, it was cold, precise. They had mistaken her forgiveness for weakness again, and this time there would be no gentle correction, only consequence. She folded Ruth's newspaper neatly, set it beside her wine glass, and whispered, "Autumn's here again. Let the leaves fall where they must." The lawsuit hit Savannah's gossip circuit within a day. Local blogs called it a tragic family rift between a self-made matriarch and her ambitious daughter-in-law. Reporters camped outside Evelyn's building, hungry for comment. She ignored them all. The city could talk. Truth needed no defense when documented properly. At dawn, Evelyn sat in her office with her attorney, James, surrounded by folders and digital records. Decades of meticulous bookkeeping were now her greatest weapon. "They claim joint ownership of your firm's original investment accounts," James said, adjusting his glasses. "They were never joint," Evelyn replied. "Melissa had access for a sponsorship fund, nothing more. I've got the authorization letters, timestamps, bank logs." James smiled faintly. "Then this will be brief, but be prepared, they'll fight dirty. I expect nothing less." Later that afternoon, she received an email from Daniel. "Mom, please don't escalate this. Melissa is panicking. We can settle quietly." Evelyn read the message 3 times, searching for the son she used to know. She wrote back only one sentence, "Daniel." She declared war, not I. The first court hearing was short, procedural, but the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Melissa entered in a cream suit, the same shade she'd worn at the Atlanta conference. Her hair was perfect, her expression rehearsed calm. Daniel sat beside her, eyes fixed on the table. Evelyn's presence was the opposite. Dark navy dress, no jewelry except a silver watch. When the judge entered, Melissa's attorney launched into a speech about emotional investment and shared vision. Evelyn stayed silent until called to respond. "Mrs. Carter," the judge said, "do you wish to make a statement?" Evelyn stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to submit documentation proving that every financial contribution to Ms. Carter's business was a loan, fully recorded, signed, and repaid until default. I have timestamps, email chains, and withdrawal receipts." Melissa's attorney stammered. "These are private family matters." Evelyn's voice sliced through. "When family uses your money to build their empire, privacy ends the moment they go public." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge nodded. Documents accepted. When the hearing adjourned, Melissa brushed past her without meeting her eyes. Daniel lingered. "Mom, how could you do this?" "How could I?" Evelyn said quietly. "I built you a future." She built lies on top of it. That night, the city thundered with rain. Evelyn sat by her window, listening to the storm. The battle wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming her name. Over the next week, her evidence dismantled Melissa's claims piece by piece. Bank emails showed Melissa transferring funds into personal accounts. Contracts bore Melissa's digital signature, acknowledging Evelyn's ownership. Screenshots, statements, witnesses, all of it painted a portrait of greed masquerading as entrepreneurship. Reporters began calling the case Carter v. Carter, the price of inheritance. Evelyn's inbox filled with interview requests. She declined them all until Ruth persuaded her otherwise. "Tell your story once," Ruth said. "Let people hear it from you, not headlines." So Evelyn sat down with a respected journalist, a woman who had once profiled her firm years ago. The interview aired on local television the following Sunday. The camera caught Evelyn's poise perfectly. "I don't see this as revenge," she said calmly. "I see it as education. Generosity without boundaries turns into permission for abuse. I gave too much for too long, and when I reclaimed my dignity, they mistook it for cruelty." The journalist asked, "What do you hope your family learns from this?" Evelyn's eyes softened. That love isn't measured in money, and neither is respect. The clip went viral overnight. Public opinion shifted swiftly. Melissa's sponsorships evaporated, her reputation sinking under the weight of her own contradictions. Daniel stopped appearing at her side in photos. Within weeks, the lawsuit quietly vanished. Her attorney withdrew, citing irreconcilable differences. One evening, Daniel appeared at Evelyn's door, drenched from rain, shoulders hunched like a boy again. "She dropped the case," he said. "I know," Evelyn replied. "I didn't stop her soon enough," he whispered. "You didn't have to," she said softly. The truth stopped her. He sank onto her couch, exhausted. "I don't know what to do next." "Start by working," Evelyn said, "and by raising your children to understand that strength doesn't come from what's given, but from what's earned." Daniel nodded slowly. "Mom, thank you." She touched his hand briefly. "No need, just learn." When he left, Evelyn felt the storm finally ease inside her chest. The city outside glistened with puddles reflecting streetlights, clean, honest, restored. She closed the curtains, whispering to herself, "Some debts can only be paid in lessons." Winter returned to Savannah soft and silver, wrapping the city in quiet fog that blurred the river and dulled the sound of passing cars. From her terrace, Evelyn watched it all with calm eyes. She had learned to love silence again, the kind not born from loneliness, but from peace reclaimed. Daniel visited every weekend now. He brought groceries, helped replace a stubborn light bulb, sometimes just sat with her in the living room without saying much. There was comfort in the stillness between them, a rhythm that required no apology. The twins often joined, their laughter gentler, their manners sincere. The entitlement that once lived in their voices had been replaced with curiosity. "Grandma," Emma said one afternoon, arranging tulips in a vase, Mom started teaching finance classes at her clinic. Evelyn looked up from her book. "Teaching?" Jacob nodded. "Yeah, she calls it Money with Meaning. It's free for single mothers." For a moment, Evelyn couldn't speak. It wasn't pride she felt, something quieter, deeper. Maybe the faint ache of hope. "That's good," she finally said. "Your mother always had intelligence. She just needed humility to go with it." That night, she sat by her desk and reread an email she'd been avoiding for days. It was from Melissa. "I know I've said sorry before, but this time I mean it. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. No money talk, just honesty." Evelyn stared at the blinking cursor before replying, "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at the Riverfront Cafe." The next afternoon, the sky was gray and the air carried salt. Melissa arrived on time, dressed plainly in a gray coat, her usual glamour replaced by a kind of weary grace. She smiled faintly. "Thank you for agreeing." Evelyn's tone was calm. "You asked for honesty. Start there." Melissa's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her cup. I was angry for so long. Losing everything felt like punishment, but it was correction. You were right. I didn't earn what I had. I demanded more because I thought love meant access. Evelyn studied her face. And what does it mean now? Respect, Melissa said softly, and boundaries. For the first time in years, Evelyn heard truth in her voice. Then you're finally learning. Melissa nodded, eyes wet but steady. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to thank you. The lessons hurt, but they saved me. Evelyn took a slow breath. Hurt is what makes lessons permanent. They sat in silence for a while, watching the water shift in the wind. When they finally parted, Melissa didn't ask for money or promises. She simply said, I hope someday we can start again. That night, Daniel called. Mom, Melissa told me you met. She's different now, softer. She's learning, Evelyn said. Pain's a better teacher than comfort. He hesitated. Do you think we'll ever be the same? No, she said gently. We'll be better. Over the next months, small changes rippled quietly through their lives. Melissa's clinic program grew, attracting grants and recognition. Daniel rebuilt his career, slow but steady. The twins adjusted beautifully, thriving without luxury. Evelyn watched from afar, proud but cautious. She had learned that love must be given like oxygen, essential but never smothering. By spring, the river ran clear again. Evelyn began teaching a workshop for women over 50, sharing lessons from her career and her life. Independence, she told her students, isn't about rejecting others. It's about ensuring no one can define you. Her classes filled quickly, and younger attendees often stayed behind just to talk. They saw her not as a retired executive, but as proof that starting over didn't belong only to the young. One evening, she hosted dinner for Ruth and Margaret, her two oldest friends. Over wine, Ruth smiled. You've changed, Evelyn. Lighter. Evelyn laughed softly. When you stop carrying everyone else's mistakes, your spine straightens. Margaret raised her glass. To peace earned the hard way. Evelyn clinked hers gently, and to lessons we never stop learning. Later that night, she stepped onto her terrace. The moon reflected on the water, calm and constant. Somewhere across town, her family was sleeping, building something new without her money or protection, and that was the truest victory of all. She whispered into the cool air, to love, finally unchained. The wind carried the words away like a blessing, and for the first time in many years, Evelyn felt complete, not as a provider or a matriarch, but as a woman who had survived her own lessons and emerged wiser for it. Spring arrived with a burst of color, dogwoods blooming, air thick with jasmine, the city humming again. Evelyn's days had settled into a rhythm of quiet purpose. She volunteered at a women's shelter twice a week, offering financial counseling. It reminded her of her early years, teaching people to manage what little they had and believe that control over money meant control over destiny. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by her penthouse with takeout from her favorite cafe. He looked stronger now, the restless ambition gone from his eyes, replaced by something steadier. You're working more than I am, he teased, unpacking soup and bread. Evelyn smiled. Work keeps the mind sharp, and it reminds me why I started all this, to help people stand on their own. He hesitated before sitting. Mom, I wanted to ask about something personal. Do you ever regret how things went down? With us? With Melissa? Evelyn looked out at the skyline before answering. Regret is a waste of precision, Daniel. I used to regret giving too much. Then I regretted taking too long to stop. But now I just understand both were part of learning. He nodded. I think I understand that too. They ate in silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, Mom, Melissa's clinic program is growing fast. She got invited to speak at a healthcare conference next month. She's nervous but proud. That's good, Evelyn said genuinely. Fear usually means you're about to grow. Daniel smiled faintly. She wants to thank you publicly for everything. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Let's hope she's learned the difference between gratitude and dependence. She has, Daniel said softly. She learned it from you. Later that night, Evelyn replayed that conversation in her mind. Pride didn't come easy for her, but hearing that gave her a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Maybe forgiveness didn't need grand gestures. It lived in the quiet acceptance that growth had happened. The next week, she attended one of Melissa's community classes unannounced. The room was filled with women from different walks of life, nurses, single mothers, retirees, all listening intently as Melissa explained credit, budgeting, and investment basics. I used to think wealth was freedom, Melissa said to the group, but now I know discipline is freedom. Generosity without boundaries is just another form of debt. Evelyn felt something shift inside her, a mix of pride and disbelief. The words sounded like her own, echoed back through the voice of the woman who had once nearly destroyed her peace. When the class ended, Melissa noticed her at the back. "Evelyn," she said, startled. "You're good," Evelyn replied calmly. "Keep teaching." Melissa's eyes glistened. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "I didn't do it for you," Evelyn said gently. "I did it for the children, but I'm glad you caught up." That evening, as she walked home along the river, Evelyn realized the weight she'd carried for years had quietly lifted. Anger, resentment, fear, they had all been debts finally paid. In May, she was honored at a business gala for her contributions to women's financial education. The ballroom sparkled with laughter and light, but what moved her most wasn't the award. It was seeing Daniel and Melissa in the audience, clapping with genuine pride. When she accepted her plaque, she spoke with the calm authority that had once built an empire. "We talk about wealth as if it's a number," she said, "but real wealth is control, the power to say no without guilt, and yes without fear. Money is a tool. Integrity is the blueprint." The crowd applauded, and in that moment, Evelyn understood that her story had turned into something larger than survival. It was a lesson others could live by. After the ceremony, Melissa approached her quietly. "You were incredible," she said. "I wrote down what you said about control. I think I'll use it in class." Evelyn chuckled. "Then credit your source." "I always do," Melissa said. And, "Evelyn, thank you for everything." Evelyn smiled, not out of triumph, but peace. Just keep paying it forward. When she returned home that night, the city lights shimmered across the river like polished glass. She poured herself a small glass of wine and sat by the window, watching reflections dance. The phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "We're proud of you, Mom. The twins, too." Evelyn smiled softly. For the first time, pride didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. She whispered into the night, "Maybe some legacies aren't built to be inherited. Maybe they're meant to be learned." The moon hung low above the water, calm and full. Evelyn raised her glass. "To lessons that finally take root," she murmured. And for once she believed her own toast completely. Summer rolled over Savannah in a haze of gold and heat, draping the river in light so thick it looked molten. Evelyn turned 72 that June, though her posture and her eyes carried the alertness of someone 20 years younger. She had built empires, lost peace, and rebuilt herself without apology. These days, her wealth wasn't in numbers, it was in clarity. Her mornings were ritual. Coffee before dawn, newspapers folded into precise halves, a slow walk through Forsyth Park while the fountains hissed and robins sang. Shop owners greeted her as Ms. Carter with quiet respect. She no longer represented scandal or gossip. She represented survival. One Saturday, Daniel arrived with a letter in hand and a nervous smile. "Mom," he said, "you should read this." The envelope carried the school's seal. Emma had won an essay contest titled, "The Person Who Taught Me Strength." Evelyn unfolded it carefully, her eyes softening as she read. "My grandmother taught me that kindness isn't weakness, it's structure. She showed me that saying no doesn't mean closing your heart. It means protecting it. She says money is like a mirror. It shows you what kind of person you are when you finally have it." The room blurred for a second. Evelyn blinked back tears. She wrote this? Daniel nodded, all by herself. That afternoon, Evelyn attended the awards ceremony. The auditorium smelled faintly of chalk and excitement. When Emma stepped to the podium, voice trembling, Evelyn felt something in her chest loosen, the last knot of old pain. "Everything I know about strength," Emma said, "I learned from watching my grandmother rebuild her life. She didn't fight people. She taught them through silence." The crowd applauded. Evelyn stood with pride, her heart steady and full. After the ceremony, Melissa approached her quietly. "She wrote it in secret," she said. "Didn't even show me until the teacher called." Evelyn smiled. "That's how lessons work. They grow quietly." Later that week, Daniel and Melissa came for dinner. The table was simple: roasted chicken, salad, wine. The laughter felt genuine. For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel like she was hosting a negotiation. She was simply sharing a meal. Halfway through dessert, Melissa said, "Evelyn, I've been offered a partnership at the clinic to lead the financial literacy division. It's small, but it's stable." Evelyn smiled. "And you said yes?" "Yes," Melissa replied, eyes bright. "I want to build something real this time. Transparent. Useful." "Good," Evelyn said softly. "That's what rebuilding looks like." Daniel raised his glass. "You were right, Mom. Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to us." Evelyn met his gaze. "It wasn't loss, Daniel. It was tuition. Life's most expensive degree." The evening ended with hugs and promises to see each other again soon. When they left, Evelyn stood at the doorway watching their car disappear down the quiet street. For once, she didn't feel the urge to worry or control. They were finally capable of steering their own lives. A week later, a journalist called for a follow-up interview. "Mrs. Carter, you've become a symbol for women redefining independence. What's your main lesson for others?" Evelyn chuckled. "Money tests love. If someone's affection changes the moment you stop paying for it, you've learned their true price." The article spread quickly online, but Evelyn didn't care about attention anymore. She'd lived long enough to know that the most powerful stories were the ones told through example. In late August, she hosted a fundraiser for her scholarship program, designed to help single mothers return to school. Melissa handled logistics flawlessly. Daniel managed the donors. Emma and Jacob passed hors d'oeuvres with proud grins. Watching them, Evelyn felt a quiet certainty. Her family had finally grown up. When it was her turn to speak, she kept her words brief. "I used to believe generosity meant saying yes. Now I know it means giving wisely. Real love doesn't drain you, it disciplines you." Applause filled the courtyard. Ruth lifted her glass from the front row. "To Evelyn Carter," she called, "the woman who taught Savannah how to stand tall without leaning on anyone." Evelyn laughed softly. "And to everyone who learned that lesson the hard way." After the guests left, she stepped outside alone. The string lights flickered overhead. Crickets hummed. The night smelled of jasmine and possibility. For years, she'd defined her worth by what she could give. Now, she defined it by what she could keep: her peace, her dignity, her freedom. She caught her reflection in the dark glass of her window. Silver hair, clear eyes, a faint smile. "Not bad," she whispered. Not bad at all. And for once, she didn't need anyone else to agree. Autumn painted Savannah gold and crimson, the air sharp with the scent of rain and oak. At 72, Evelyn Carter had mastered the quiet art of balance. Her mornings began before sunrise, coffee, meditation, a slow walk by the river. The noise that once defined her life had faded, replaced by a calm that came only after surviving storms. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her name, once tangled in scandal and family drama, now carried weight for a different reason: wisdom. Local newspapers sometimes called her the woman who taught Savannah how to protect its wealth. She preferred a simpler title: teacher. One cool morning, Ruth joined her for breakfast. "You know," Ruth said, stirring her tea, "you've become a story people tell about second chances and boundaries." Evelyn smiled. "Then I hope they remember the cost. Peace isn't a gift, Ruth. It's an invoice you pay with heartbreak." That evening, she attended the opening of a new community center on the east side of the city. The building shimmered under strings of white lights, filled with laughter and hope. The plaque by the entrance read, "The Carter Foundation for Women, founded by Melissa Carter." Evelyn stood silently, pride and disbelief folding together in her chest. Daniel greeted her at the door, his suit slightly wrinkled, but his smile easy. "She wanted to surprise you," he said softly. Inside, Melissa stood at the microphone, her voice steady. "A few years ago, I confused generosity with dependence. I believed success meant having access to someone else's power. I was wrong. This foundation exists to teach women the difference." When her gaze found Evelyn's, it didn't waver. There was no guilt, only respect. The crowd applauded as Melissa continued. "This center is dedicated to the woman who taught me the hardest lesson of my life, that love without accountability isn't love at all." After the speech, Melissa led Evelyn to the plaque inside the lobby. Inspired by Evelyn Carter, whose lessons turned pain into power. Evelyn touched the cool bronze letters. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I did," Melissa said, eyes shining, "because everything I am now began with what you refused to give me then." They shared a brief, wordless moment that felt like forgiveness. Not grand, just true. That night, back home, Evelyn poured a glass of wine and stood by her window. Rain had begun to fall, blurring the city lights. She thought of the woman she had once been, the one locked out on a frozen porch, humiliated and heartbroken. That woman had died that night, but from her ashes rose someone stronger, sharper, freer. If she could speak to her past self, she would have said, "You will survive this. They will learn. And one day, your name will stand not for what you gave away, but for what you kept, your dignity." The following week, she gave a final guest lecture at the university. The room was filled with young professionals, notebooks ready, eyes bright. Her topic, the ethics of wealth. "Money doesn't corrupt," Evelyn began. "It reveals. It shows you who respects you and who only respects access. True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in control over your own peace." A student raised her hand. "Mrs. Carter, what's the most important lesson you've learned?" Evelyn smiled. "Never mistake affection for obligation. When people expect your kindness as a right, it's time to remind them it was always a choice." The class erupted in applause. As she walked out, one student whispered to another, "That's the kind of woman I want to be at 72. Later, she dined with Ruth and Margaret beneath the warm glow of cafe lights. "So," Margaret teased, "are you finally done teaching lessons?" Evelyn laughed softly. "Lessons never end, Margaret. I'm just teaching different ones now, quieter, kinder, but still sharp enough to cut through denial." After they said goodbye, Evelyn walked home under the lamplight, the city breathing around her. Her steps were steady, her reflection in shop windows strong and serene. For the first time, she felt the full weight of peace, not fragile, but earned. Standing on her terrace, she raised her glass to the night sky. "To storms survived," she whispered, "and to the warmth they leave behind. And if you've walked a similar road, if you've ever given too much, forgiven too fast, or mistaken control for love, Evelyn's story is your reminder. Peace begins the moment you stop proving your worth to those who never valued it. So take back your calm, set your boundaries. And if her journey moved you, share it, so someone else remembers that even the coldest betrayal can lead to the warmest strength. Because sometimes the door that closes you out is the same one that opens your life.